So today we are talking about everyone's favorite topic, taxes, but also liens. So it's really a twofer. And I've named this "'Tis the Season," review of tax liens and how they affect associations. Not talking about income taxes, but it is coming up to April 15th tax season. So I've gotten some questions about tax liens recently. I had a whole bunch of these issues come up several years ago, pre-COVID days, and they're starting to come up again. So I wanted to kind of do an overview of what they are, how to look at them, how to understand redemption statements and what that means, and then also how they affect associations in a couple different ways. Both from like a common area tax lien that associations own and from tax liens against like a homeowner's property as well. There are implications for both. So we'll go ahead and get started. I am also admitting a few people here last minute. If you are just joining us, we're just getting started. And if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. I think everyone else is pretty much on mute at this moment. Okay, so property taxes at a glance. Like I said, property taxes kind of come up in our context and for your purposes in two different ways. We're going to start out by talking about property taxes that are owed by property that's owned by the association, also known as common area. And usually you managers, as you guys know probably more than me, pay those taxes when you get your tax statements at the beginning of each year, and it shows the amount of taxes that are owed on different parcels, and you can go online to pay those. That's kind of what we're talking about here, the first half of this presentation. As you may be aware, you can find the tax information for any parcel if you have the parcel number handy. That's the way that the treasurer's websites like you to look it up, which you can also get from the assessor's website if you're not sure. If you just have the owner's name or the address or something, you can look that parcel number up there. And each county has its own treasurer's website, of course, depending on where the property is located. Today, for the most part, we're going to be focusing on Maricopa County just because that's biggest and probably most popular for our purposes. But I know some of you have clients up north in maybe Yavapai County, maybe even in Pinal County. I do have a screenshot of Pinal County in here just for kicks. So we'll look at those, we'll take a look at those. But each county has its own website. They're a little bit different, but mostly the same. And there you can view the current taxes that are owed and you can pay them. But you can also view the past taxes and whether they've been paid, how much you paid, and whether there are liens for any given tax year. So that's kind of your one-stop shopping. It's really nice that they have it all in one place. I also wanted to touch on common area valuation, which I think is something that most of you are probably aware of, but I did have some questions recently where some managers weren't sure or hadn't really run into this issue. But especially if you have a new-ish community and the common area has just been deeded over to the association from the builder or the developer, one thing you should make sure, and you'll be getting the tax statement, so that's one easy way to see, but there is a way to combine all of the association's common areas with the assessor and have them valued as common area instead of one of the other categories that the assessor values property at. I think common area, a lot of the times, a popular one is just vacant land. That has a different valuation rate than association common area. And the nice thing is that once your properties are valued as common area parcels, the taxes that are assessed are at a much lower rate than any other particular valuation. Quick pause. Someone asked if we'll be sharing this PowerPoint. We can certainly do that. I'll work with our team behind the scenes and get that out one way or the other to those that are attending, but we'll be sure to make it available as well. The other thing that I put on here on this slide are the forms, particularly that you would want to look for to do your common area evaluation with the county assessor. And again, this is county to county specific, but for Maricopa County, it's quite simple. they have a forms section on the assessor's website, and those are the names of the forms: the residential common area evaluation checklist, the request to combine common area, parcel numbers. You fill those two out, and the checklist is really nice because it's like step-by-step instructions. You need to attach the deed that shows that the association actually owns those parcels, which is usually from the, like I said, the builder hereby conveys to such and such HOA, tracks A through F. That's all you would need there. And then also the CC&Rs, which for the most part, I think in my travels with the county assessor, they just look at that there's a definition of common area that says common area is land that's owned by the association. See deed, land owned by the association. These are common areas. So they just kind of piece that together. And once they do, you are good to go, and you get a nice deal on the assessor's valuation of your parcels, which is nice. Moving on, now the next couple of slides are sort of just for your reference. Hopefully you can see these okay, but this is Maricopa County Treasurer's website, just homepage. And I wanted to pull this up so you could see where I was talking about. I've highlighted this yellow square here, not very neatly, but it is highlighted, and it says parcel search, and that's where you would put in your parcel number for whatever property that you want to see. Okay, what do we owe here on this parcel's taxes? For common area, you usually have a lead parcel once you do the combination with the assessor's office. So if you look up any parcel, it kind of pulls up as a group. But if you wanted to look up, for some reason, a homeowner's parcel number as well, to see if they have any tax liens, and we'll be talking about that kind of in the second half here, as far as why you would want to know that. But this is what it looks like. It's right on the front page. You put in the parcel number, you click search, and it should pull it right up. The next one is the Pinal County Treasurer's website, which looks a little bit different, but largely the same. Again, this is their parcel inquiry page. And I've highlighted in yellow again at the top here. It says, what do you want to search by? So it's a little bit more user-friendly, but you can still select parcel number, and then they explain to you, like if you have your tax notice sitting in front of you, where you can find your parcel number on that as well. It's usually like they have an example here of this 3 number, 2 number, 4 number kind of for an example. So that's your parcel number. When we're talking about parcel numbers, that's what you look for. And this will show you the same information as well, as far as the current year's outstanding taxes and the history, however far back you want to go. You can click through the years, see what was paid, and in what amounts, what interest, and if there were any penalties and things like that. Now this is for Maricopa County, again, bouncing back to Maricopa County, but this is the tax history that will come up. So when you put in your parcel number, this is a parcel that's owned by a homeowners association, and you'll see at the top here, it starts with the current, like the most recent tax year due. The taxes, the property taxes, as you probably know, maybe even from your own personal use, is divided into 2 chunks, the first half and the second half for the one tax year. The first half is due, is considered delinquent if not paid by November 1st of that year. So for 2021, those first half taxes were delinquent by November 1st, 2021. We're kind of in that period right now for the second half of the 2021 taxes, even though it's 2022. And those will be delinquent if not paid by May 1st. So that's coming up. But this one, this particular example, they owe nothing for the 2021 taxes, probably because they just paid the whole year last year. But then you also get a nice history here going back quite a ways, and you see the status. These were all paid, which is lovely, because there was no tax assessed in this particular for whatever reason in this example. But on the bottom in 2007, you see that there's a tax lien, and there was some tax assessed, and now the amount due is quite high because it's been quite a long time. So we're going to talk about that tax lien and what that means. But I wanted you to see this so you're familiar with this if you ever have to look this up, or if a board is like, how can we tell? this is kind of an example, and you can click on any one of these years. Like, did we not pay our taxes in 2018? And you're like, I have no idea. This is where you could find out, and you can click onto the 2018. That's a clickable link. You can click on the amount due to kind of, and it'll show you a more detailed breakdown of what exactly was due, what was paid, and all that good stuff. And then this is back to what I was saying about the common area valuation. As I mentioned, if they're combined and valued as common area, which you just have to click through that checklist that I mentioned on the first slide. And once they review that and they value your common area, you're good to go for all the years ahead. You don't need to recertify or anything like that. The taxes are very minimal. They're assessed at a rate of 10% and a valuation of 500, but the taxes end up being like in the teens most often, with the caveat, and I know some of you managers are like, not always, which is true. We've had a few come up in the past few years where they're in special like districts, and those districts are like jacking up the rates of certain things. Like for one that I'm thinking of, there's a special water district that's based on the amount of water that gets allegedly used on these common areas. But the rates have just like skyrocketed, and that makes those particular tax bills quite high. But the otherwise the taxes that are assessed by the county are pretty minimal, so that's nice, and that's a good savings for your boards. Yeah, otherwise, if they're not correctly valued, the taxes assessed by the county can be quite high. Like I said, they're usually assessed at a rate of like vacant land, which is another like code rather than common area. And they can be, you know, a couple $100s to a couple thousands of dollars, depending on how many parcels you have and how big they are and things like that. But so if you're not sure, if you have boards that aren't sure if their common areas are valued as common area, or if you want us to help combine them or have them properly valued as common area, we can certainly do that. We can certainly take a look. A good step, if you want to take on your own, is to pull up a parcel or two with your county assessor online and just type in the address or the parcel number there and scroll to kind of the middle section where it has your property valuation, and it'll say in there if it's common area or not. So that's one way to do it. Or send it to us. We'll take a quick look and advise on if they're good to go or if they're not. And you might be in one of those special districts, so we can tell you that too. So that's how you do that. And again, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to help. It's a fairly quick and simple process. It's not going to break the bank. So send that over if you have questions. Now, the fun part. What happens if common area tax is unpaid? Not by you guys, by like the developer or the bad management company that they fired. They just haven't paid property taxes on the common areas for years. Like that one we saw, 2007, just it fell through the cracks for whatever reason. If those taxes on the common area are unpaid, the property will be included in what's called a tax lien auction, which is held by the state. Ooh, the tax lien auction. It's an exciting process. It happens online. And it happens every year. The state auctions off tax liens for parcels with unpaid taxes for all kinds of property, commercial property, common area parcels, homeowner properties. It's the sky's the limit. If you're not paying your taxes, the state's going to auction off liens. And what that means is it's an opportunity for mostly investors to purchase a tax lien against that property. That doesn't mean that they become the owner of that property per se yet, just by virtue of the fact that they hold the lien. But they now have an interest in that property that ranks pretty high up in the priority of liens, potential liens that can be against a property. So the auction's in February each year. As I mentioned, it's online, which I think is an exciting thing for the state. They're pretty jazzed about that. I mean, obviously it used to be in person. Even pre-COVID, though, I think they started to move it online, and they seem pretty proud of that. And how it works is that they auction the taxes for the previously preceding year. So this February 2022, they auctioned off the 2020 tax liens for taxes that went unpaid in 2020. The reason that they didn't do 2021 is because the second half of the taxes are still owed. And like I mentioned, they won't be delinquent until May 1st of this year for 2021. So you're always like a beat behind. So it's kind of like almost like a 2-year offset, but that's how that works as far as what's being auctioned off. It is an auction in the true sense, but you might be wondering, do they pay money? Is it like a sheriff's sale? Like, what are we talking about in an auction? And it's kind of interesting. The winning bidder for the tax lien is based on whoever bids the lowest percentage rate of interest that's going to be added onto the delinquent taxes in order to pay them off. So if I'm bidding and we have Paul bidding on this parcel, if I come in at like a high, like I want 16% interest, I'm swinging for the fences, and Paul comes in at a reasonable like 8% interest, he would win if the two of us are the only two bidding for that piece of land, that parcel. So sometimes you'll see tax liens where the lien holder has the lien, but it's for like 3% interest, which is still something, but that's why it's so low. Every now and then you'll see them in the teens, like 16, 14, 12% interest, and that might just be because there was not a ton of interest in that particular parcel. So it's kind of interesting. Whoever bids the lowest interest rate percentage gets that tax lien. And again, that doesn't mean that they own the property right then and there, but they just have a lien that they hold that they can then potentially foreclose on in the future. And that's what we're going to talk about next. I see some comments that say great timing. So I'm glad that this is good timing for you guys. Like I said, I've had so many of these come up years ago and they kind of took a lull and now they're back again. So I'm glad that this is helpful, and it's good that you guys know kind of you can pay the taxes online, since some of you have redeemed some tax liens. So I'm glad that it's helpful. And then Vanessa's asking, how long do you hold the tax lien before it can be taken over by the holder? That's a good question, and we'll move on because I'm going to address that, I think, in the next slide or two. Let's see. Yes, okay. So tax lien foreclosure in a nutshell. And again, right now we're talking about common area parcels owned by the association who didn't pay the taxes on the common area, and now there's tax lien. But this tax lien foreclosure process that I'm going to outline here is the process that would apply for any other lot, like a homeowner owned lot or a condo unit or anything else. So you went to the auction online, you put in your interest percentage bid, and you were the lowest and you win, and you get a tax lien from the state. It's also a little bit interesting. This is kind of an irrelevant fact, but every entity or person that attends the auction has to have a certificate of purchase number. So if you look online, which we'll look at a redemption statement here in a little bit, but the tax liens are held by certificate of purchase holders, and then it's just a number. It doesn't say like held by Goodman Holmgren LLC. It's always a number. And the way that you decode that number so you can say, okay, well, it's held by 12247. Who is that? At least this is how it used to be. I haven't looked into it if this changed in the past year or two, but the treasurer's office sells CDs, compact discs, that you can order, and it's like a decoder ring that has all the numbers of the CP holders and who that actually is, what entity or person that represents. So it's a little bit funny. You kind of have to look into it a little bit. You can't just look up and say, oh, this is owned by so-and-so LLC. But I think that makes it a little bit more fun because you have to put in your CD and look through and kind of control F through the numbers and find out who holds it. So just a side note, if your boards are ever like, just find out who holds this. It's a little bit more complicated, but not hard in any regard. You just have to have the right decoder ring for that particular year. So turning back to the actual lien, you hold it. You're the owner of that lien for that particular property. That lien is not eligible for foreclosure the minute that you purchase it. The way that this works is that the statute requires the lien holder to wait to foreclose from 3 years after the date the lien was sold. So for example, let's turn back to February 2022, where they just recently would have auctioned off the 2020 full tax year. Those people or entities that purchased liens in February 2022 can't foreclose until February 2025. So they're just kind of hanging out for 3 years, laying low. They have their lien, it's not going anywhere. If someone pays the taxes, like I saw someone in the comments said, hey, we just paid a bunch of taxes that were old and outstanding. If someone, like if you were to go and say, oh, I looked this up, our taxes didn't get paid in 2020, let's go ahead and pay them off, you're good to go. That extinguishes that lien. But if it sits for 3 years and nobody's paid it still, then this tax lien holder can get the ball rolling, and it becomes eligible for foreclosure 3 years after the date that it's purchased. But tax liens expire 10 years after the sale date. So they have to wait that 3-year period, but then once that 3 years has passed, they have between year 3 and year 10 to actually do something, take some sort of action and foreclose. So, you know, it's kind of a hurry up and wait game. I also just recently dealt with a matter where one of the liens was about to expire, and because they had started the process of the foreclosure, the statute requires the lien holder to send a notice to the owner of the parcel that says, hey, I'm going to foreclose, you better pay this. If they've taken that step, then the 10-year expiration is essentially extended for that period of time where they gave you in the letter to respond. I think it was a 30-day demand to respond. So they got from February 2012 to February 2022 plus 30 days to foreclose on their lien. But the tax or the lien holder has to take action. They can't just sit on it, and come in year 11 or 12 or 13 and say, here we are.
Yeah, I'll get it to you in the next couple hours.
Damn. So once it's foreclosure eligible, after that 3-year waiting period, a tax lien holder can file a foreclosure lawsuit just like an association does. It's not something like a trustee sale for a bank, for example, where they don't have to go to court and get a judgment. The tax lien holder still does need to file a lawsuit. As I mentioned before that step, they do need to send a demand letter to the owner of the property to pay the amounts owed. If nobody pays it, they can file a lawsuit. And if the taxes aren't redeemed or paid by the owner of the property, or honestly, anyone else, anyone can come in and pay these. But usually it's someone with an interest in the property, not just some benefactor paying off everyone's tax liens. But if the foreclosure lawsuit kind of comes to its conclusion because no one's paid the amounts that are owed, what the lien holder ultimately ends up with is a treasurer's deed to the property, and then they become the new owner. At that point, they record their treasurer's deed and they're the new owner. It's interesting to note that, like for reference, when an association files a foreclosure lawsuit to collect assessments or things like that, we don't get a deed to anything. So that's kind of a difference there, where we end up with just a judgment where we can send it to the sheriff and the sheriff will seize and sell the house. That's not the process here when a tax lien forecloses. Honestly and truly, they kind of skip a step, which is nice for them. They get the keys to the gate, they get the treasurer's deed, and they're the owner. Let's see, we have another question. It says, do you have to pay the same property tax lien for that address every year for 3 years straight before you get the deed? No, let me see. Do you have to pay the same? No, so once you pay, so if I hold a tax lien for 2019, because 2019 wasn't paid, and I hold that tax lien, and the association comes and pays the $800 that it owes, including my interest. Me as the tax lien holder, the treasurer takes their cut of taxes. I get my interest percentage on top of that, kind of as a penalty to you, the association, for not paying. And then my lien is extinguished. So I don't have a right to foreclose anymore on my 2019 lien because it's been paid. So I hope I'm answering that question correctly, but let me know if not. Lawsuits from HOA suing management companies for not paying and losing ownership of the land. It's a good question. I have not seen those ever pop up, but it's possible. And it would have to be some sort of negligent situation. A lot of times too, it's the developer, the declarant, who kind of held these, owned the common area for a large chunk of time before it turned over to the association. And those are the amounts that aren't paid. So they kind of left the association high and dry on those. And as you guys might know, sometimes the developers or the declarants, they're in the wind or defunct or bankrupt or who knows. So I haven't seen a lot of those kinds of things pop up, but it's a good question. It's a good reminder to kind of keep on top of these, because this is the kind of thing that can happen. If it's not paid, if taxes aren't paid, you need to bid on the same property for 3 straight years to get the deed. No, the way that they get the deed is by filing a foreclosure lawsuit, a tax lien foreclosure lawsuit. And so the way they do that is it's the entity that holds the lien versus the owner of the property. So they would name the association in this context, and anyone else that has an interest in the property. And from there, if nobody pays, there's not really a defense. There's not much of a defense in that lawsuit, because sure, the association could appear and say, hey, we don't want to lose this, but yes, we admit we didn't pay these taxes. There's not, unless there's a defensible reason that didn't happen, or there's something in dispute, there's not much you can do from there. So it's a good idea, at least if you have a sense of, okay, well, we know that our association that we manage has outstanding taxes from 2015 and 2016. We don't want to pay them, but we'll see if the lien holder ends up foreclosing. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about next, as far as what can the association do short of paying the amounts that are owed. What options does the association have to kind of get out of the situation and having some random investor take title to a portion of common area property. So this is where we're going to get into how does this actually affect the common area. Okay, so common area, in addition to being owned by the association, is obviously subject to the CC&Rs and the plat and the governing documents. And those governing documents and the plat have different requirements. So they need to be maintained. For example, they need to be insured, generally speaking. They have different easements over them and across them for owners to access, or maybe a public utility easement, depending on what your parcel is for. Those sorts of things, like the easements and the rules that govern the common area parcels, don't go away just because a tax lien holder forecloses on the property, on the parcels. And that's kind of a bargaining chip for the association. And it's honestly a bad investment for an investor to have a tax lien on common areas, because they're not going to just be able to foreclose on a common area and put up a mini mall. They have to follow the zoning of that parcel. They have to insure it. There's a lot of cost to maintain it, and whatever easements it's subject to. They can't just come in and do what they want. And there's case law that supports that. So one of the ways that we've been able to sort of get around the idea of quote unquote losing a common area parcel to a tax lien holder is to negotiate with that lien holder and point out these flaws in their investment strategy, and to see if we can maybe make a deal. So as I mentioned here on the slide, this kind of summarizes what options does the association have when if you get a letter that says, hi, we're about to foreclose on your common area, what can you do? Option number one, as I talked about a little bit before on the last slide, is to redeem or pay the amount of taxes that it owes on the common area parcel. Pay it in full, which is the taxes plus the interest, whatever that interest rate is, to the treasurer's office, and they'll process that and get rid of the lien like that. Otherwise, if you don't want to pay it or you can't pay it, the association maybe doesn't have the money to pay it, maybe you can negotiate with the lien holder. And I'll get more into that on how that works. But this, and again, hopefully you can see this on your computer, but if not, we'll circulate this PowerPoint. But this is what's called a redemption statement. Again, this is from the Maricopa County Treasurer's Office, which is kind of what I focused on for today. But this is for an association that owns common area. And you can see that this is for the tax year down here. It says 2007. This is for that, if you remember at the start of the presentation where they had an amount of taxes owed from 2007, this is that redemption statement for that tax lien. So you can see here that the tax year that they owe is for 2007. Each tax year can have a different lien holder, or they can be held by the same lien holder. So this is where you find out that information. You also see here kind of towards the left side, it says interest factor. It says 16%. So that's the bummer for the association, because usually it's lower than that because the lowest interest rate wins the auction. But obviously nobody else wanted to purchase this because they were able to get it for the high rate of 16% interest. So what that means is the taxes that were assessed for back in 2007 for this common area parcel was $5,835, which is also high. We're already starting out bad because it's already a high. This is not a common area valuation for this parcel. And then you have to add in the redemption interest, which is redemption again just means, you know, the amount to pay this off. The interest is what the lien holder stands to get in this whole arrangement. So the taxes will go to the state. The treasurer will take that $5,835 for themselves. And then the redemption interest is $9,337 if paid by February 28th, 2022. So this top column has it has the current month and then the next month. Oops. So for 2/28, the total due, plus you have a $10 redemption fee, the total due to pay it in full and get rid of the lien entirely is $15,183. If you don't pay it until the end of March, it's $15,260 because that interest is always going up at the 16%. So this is a high example. This is not how they always are, but this kind of gives you an idea of where you can get your information as far as what's even owed, which is in these two columns, what the interest rate is for the lien holder or the certificate of purchase holder. And then up here in this column or in this row, this says certificate of purchase CP number. And I've kind of redacted it off, but this is where you would see the CP number as far as what entity or person holds this lien for the tax year. And I talked about that decoder CD. That's the number that you would put in and to find out who exactly you're talking about. Or if they've sued you, they are the plaintiff. So that's another way to find out who it is. And it says it up here too. A tax lien was sold on 2/6/2012 to CP buyer number blah on the property described above for taxes at the buyer rate of 16%. So this will always be on a redemption statement too, which is a nice summary of what exactly happened. And then here you have the date that it was sold. So think back, liens extinguished 10 years from the date that they were sold. So this particular lien would be extinguished on 2/6/2022, even though it's for the tax year of 2007. Perhaps no one bid on it until 2012 would be my guess as far as why there's that gap there. And then again, it says the CP buyer number, so that's the who. And then for the interest rate at that 16%, that's where you find out this information. And this again is called a redemption statement. Sometimes if you say, hey, we just got this letter, someone's threatening to foreclose on our common area, I will usually pull these redemption statements and attach them for you and the board's review. Hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of why I'm attaching this when I do. It kind of gives you the background information of what happened, plus also a nice summary of what's due. So for this association, if they're looking at this and they're like, oh, $15,260 casual, you know, let's break out the 15 grand that we have to pay for taxes. A lot of associations just don't have that to be able to pay that and avoid this impending foreclosure, assuming that it wasn't after, you know, February 2022. Pretend this presentation was 2 months ago. And then this lien was still valid, and they might lose their property if they don't pay this $15,260 in taxes and interest. I'm going to pause. I think there's another question here. Let's see. Okay, no, I think I answered that one, so I'll keep going. But so that's what that means. That's option one. This board would be able to pay the $15,260 to be able to retain title to their common area parcel and have this guy go away forever. Alternatives, because that sucks. No board is like, cool, let's pay everything that we owe in full plus interest. So the alternative, as I started to talk about before, is to negotiate with the tax lien holder. Why would the tax lien holder negotiate? And this is what I started to get into a little bit before. The common area is still subject to CC and honors and all the requirements. Like I said, insurance, the rules, the restrictions, there's easements, there's maintenance that the association takes care of because we're awesome. And now if you want to foreclose on it, that's your job for that parcel, not for all of the common areas, but for that parcel that you're supposedly going to take over, you have to now do all the things. And I've put a couple citations in there. Like I said, that's supported by statute, that the fact that easements and recorded instruments like that remain despite the foreclosure. And then there's a case in there as well. Again, just for your reference, that's usually our song and dance, obviously. But if you're like, where did that come from? I put a few of those citations in there for you as well. So the tax lien holder is limited on how the land can be used, and it comes with certain obligations that they might not want to take on, and that they might not realize that they have to take on when they bid on this in February 3 to 10 years ago. They're like, oh shoot, like I didn't bid on a homeowner lot. I bid on a association common area, and now it's more work and I hate it and I don't want it. So that's why we kind of have an interest in negotiating with them. They kind of have an interest in negotiating with us. So how does that work and what does that look like? When we've done it in the past, what we usually do is we offer for the tax lien holder to walk away and not foreclose, enter into an agreement not to foreclose sometimes, or we've done it a couple ways in the past where we are able to actually satisfy the lien, but also get some money back for the association without paying the total amount owed. Benefit to the tax lien holder because they also don't need to move forward with foreclosing, so they save their attorney's fees in proceeding with that process as well. Like I mentioned, one way we've done this is that we've done agreements with the tax lien holders that says, the association's going to pay me $5,000, and I agree to never, ever, ever foreclose on this tax lien. Everyone signs it. The association cuts a check and it's more or less resolved. Because we didn't pay the full amount, the treasurer will still reflect that there is a lien outstanding, but as long as the guy who holds the lien isn't going to do anything about it, he'll just let it expire over time and you'll be good to go. The other way I've done this in the past is if the taxes outstanding are not $15,000, let's say it's like maybe $1,000 or $2,000 that's owed with interest, and the association offers to pay the lien holder $500 to go away. One thing that we've agreed to do in that context, where the numbers are a little bit smaller, is that the association still pays off the full amount of the taxes to the treasurer, so that the treasurer will kind of mark it as paid and good to go. And then the tax lien holder gets their funds as part of that process from the treasurer, and then cuts a check back to the association for the difference. So if the association paid $2,000 to the treasurer to get that lien paid in full, and then that money goes to, the portion of that money goes to the lien holder, and he pays the difference, so that the association is only paying $500 at the end of the day. So like I say here, contact our office for help. And this is kind of what I mean when I say that these started to come up again. Maybe these investors are starting to, be able to feel comfortable foreclosing on these kinds of things again. But if you know that you have a community that has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or how many ever outstanding tax years that haven't been paid, that may or may not have liens that were auctioned for them, send them our way and we can take a look at what's going on. Or if you're kind of at the midnight hour where you've gotten that, hey, we're going to foreclose on you letter, certainly send that over as well, and we can start that negotiation process and see if they'll kind of work with us. Like if they're owed $15,000 and we can agree to have them go away for, like I said, 5, 6, 7,000, that's at least somewhat of a savings for the association, although those numbers are high. And the lien holder has incentive to do that as well, potentially. So something else to keep in mind. Okay, briefly, we'll get into tax liens against homeowner property. It's a very similar process. It's the exact same auction process. That doesn't change, but now we're going to kind of pivot and talk about owners within an association who maybe also aren't paying their taxes, and they are also subject to the same process that we just kind of summarized, which is if they're not paying their taxes, the state will auction their lien. That also happens at the same time in February. It's the same process with the interest rate percentage, and the lowest percentage wins. And they have to wait the 3 years and all of that. Why does this matter to the homeowners association? Great question. This gets to, and you guys may be more familiar with this aspect or maybe less familiar with this aspect, but this gets into collections and foreclosure of the association's lien. That's the only reason why the association would care about a lien on a homeowner property, because it does affect the association's lien potentially if a lien holder comes in and forecloses on a piece on a homeowner's property. So again, have the citations in here, but ARS 33-1807B and ARS 33-1256B, that's the statute that governs lien priority as it relates to the association's lien. So there's largely 3 categories that have priority, or that are like first in line before the association when it comes to the lien. One of those, which we very rarely see, is liens recorded before the recording of the declaration. That doesn't come up very often, but it is in the statute. The second one is recorded first mortgage on the unit or the lot, or a first deed of trust, which is usually held by a bank. So the first deed of trust, not any subsequent deeds of trust, but the first one, usually to buy the house, to fund the purchase of the house, that is superior to or ahead of, in line from the association. The last one is the one that's relevant for today, which is liens for real estate taxes and other governmental assessments or charges against the unit. So of course, when they wrote the statute, they put the state property taxes ahead of us. How rude, but not surprising. So what does that mean? What that means is the tax lien holder who holds a lien for that homeowner lot is superior to the association's contractual and statutory assessment lien. So if that tax lien holder forecloses through the process that we just summarized, and they get a treasurer's deed and they become the owner of that homeowner's lot, it's not great for the association because that extinguishes the association's lien because we're junior to their interest. It's sort of like if any of you have been through foreclosure with our office or with any other office, and where we have to sometimes name someone who has a judgment recorded against a homeowner because they're junior to our interest. So when the association forecloses for assessments, those other creditors will be wiped out because we're foreclosing. Well, in the tax lien situation, it shifts up the hill. And if that tax lien holder forecloses, our lien is wiped out. All hope may not be lost. The homeowners still probably owe the amounts personally, unless they filed for bankruptcy and got a discharge along the way. But the lien will be wiped out if this happens, if the tax lien holder on lot that a homeowner owns actually proceeds with foreclosure and nobody pays, that will extinguish the association's lien. As I note here, that obviously also means that the association can no longer foreclose to collect delinquent assessments that are owed to it, but they are probably still owed personally by the owner. So you could still like get a judgment and garnish wages or bank accounts or things like that. Let's see. I think we have a question here. What if there's a lien on common area that has a clubhouse or other amenity? Do they own the building if it's foreclosed on? Yes, so they would own, you know, all the improvements and anything that's on that parcel as well. But again, it would be subject to everything, all the, you know, rules, restrictions, requirements, maintenance that are in the CC&Rs that govern the association. And so depending on your CC&Rs, like maybe some of you are familiar with certain sets of CC&Rs that have like a change of use provision in the CC&Rs, which says if the association wants to change how a common area is used, it needs X% vote of the members. So there might be things that can still govern like what they can do with it. Can they just tear down the clubhouse? Probably not, but again, it's a very fact specific sort of situation. But yes, they would own anything that's on it, the landscaping, the clubhouse, the pool, heaven forbid. That would be part of what they get when they foreclose. So turning back to owner property tax liens, that tax lien holder's foreclosing, what can the association do? There's not a lot of options. I know everyone gets excited when there's not a lot of options. Option number one, again, is for the association to pay the amount of the owner's delinquent taxes owed to the treasurer. The reason that the association would do this is solely to protect and preserve the association's lien on that property. Obviously, it doesn't make sense in every context, but imagine a situation where the association is owed $10,000 for some reason by this homeowner. You know, maybe you've performed a whole bunch of self-help and that's all secured by the lien. And also they haven't paid assessments in 4 years. So the amounts just added up, they owe $10,000. But now there's this tax lien holder who holds a lien on the 2019 tax year, and they owe $1,400 in taxes plus interest. So we'll call it $2,000 owed in the taxes and $10,000 owed to the association. It's possible that the board would approve paying the $2,000 to the treasurer so that that guy goes away. That 2019 lien holder is now gone. He's been paid. The association's lien is still intact for the $10,000, and it could be something that's foreclosed on in the future. But I also get asked this a lot. Would the association then become the owner of that owner's lot? No. All the association did was that it paid the amounts to redeem. And that just paid, it's like paying your taxes on common area. You're just paying what's owed. It doesn't transfer ownership in any way. And it also is not something that the association probably could add onto that owner's ledger. Like, okay, well, we've $2,000 extra to you. Now we're owed $12,000. There's not really a contractual basis for the association to do that. So it would be something that the association is basically doing as a cost of business, that just as a business decision says, fine, we'll pay $2,000 out of pocket so that someday we can actually foreclose and collect on and see this $10,000, which is now more like $8,000, but it still makes some level of financial sense depending on the circumstances. But so that's option one. Option two is to sit back and see what happens. Maybe the owner will pay. Maybe they don't want to lose their house for $2,000 unpaid taxes. So it's always an option that the owner or the owner's aunt or grandma or cousin or whoever can come in and save the day and redeem, pay the taxes as well. And then that lawsuit goes away and the association didn't have to do anything. So that's nice. The other option, if they don't pay, is the foreclosure proceeds and the association lien is extinguished at that point, as I've already mentioned. But the good news is that the lien holder, which is again usually an investor, then will be the owner of the property and hopefully take it over, clean it up if it's in bad shape, and start paying the assessments from there, in theory, which is always the goal. And as I mentioned before, you still may be able to collect from the now former owner personally, get a money judgment, garnish the wages or bank accounts. But if not, if it's the perfect storm where a tax lien foreclosed and this person filed bankruptcy last year and got a discharge and the personal obligation is wiped out as well, it's possible that these amounts would need to be written off, but don't jump to that conclusion. Let us look at things and we'll see what, if any, options there are for the association. And I put on here, those who hesitate are lost, because it is true. Every now and then you just get into these situations where it's just the perfect storm of, bankruptcy this year plus tax lien foreclosure this year, or the bank foreclosed and that extinguishes an association's lien too. So these are just closing avenues the longer the association waits. So if you have accounts with sort of larger balances, the longer you wait, the harder it will get to collect. And so that's just a plug for collections. What time is it? 5 minutes left. I'm going to breeze through this last slide. This is just another kind of thing that I think is very interesting about tax liens. I call it an advanced topic because it's not something that you necessarily need to be well versed in, but I just think it's interesting. So imagine a situation where it's an association's common area. The taxes weren't paid for 2015 or 2016. So now there's tax liens for both of those years, and they're held by different CP holder numbers or different entities. They could potentially be owned by the same, but for this example, we'll say that they're different. What happens then if 2015, the tax lien holder for 2015 forecloses and starts their foreclosure process, and they get their treasurer's deed, and they're now the owner? What happens to the 2016 tax lien holder? Did he sleep on his rights? Is he still around? Interestingly, one tax lien does not extinguish another. So the foreclosure of the 2015 tax lien would not extinguish the 2016 lien. It's still there. Sort of similar to how when an association forecloses, the like mortgage or like the bank that holds the first deed of trust that still remains when a property is purchased at a sheriff's sale. Similarly here, if that 2015 tax lien holder foreclosed and got his treasurer's deed, the 2016 lien holder could come by the next year, do the same thing, and now he's the new owner. So when there's multiple tax liens, it can get a little bit hectic. I spoke to an attorney who represents a lot of tax lien holders once, and he said oftentimes the tax lien holder investor tries to pay off any other tax liens so that they're the only one left. So I thought that was interesting. It's a bit of a tactic, to just be the last man standing and to potentially, ideally have title to a piece of property like a lot, a homeowner's lot, that you can get just for people not paying their taxes. So, and again, they might try to negotiate, pay the other liens to take the property clear of those risks. But just something interesting. And if you have multiple years, that's how that would work. Multiple years held by multiple people are all individual risks. Each one of them could foreclose. Not one of them will just be automatically extinguished. So with that is all I have. Let me double check the chat here for questions. And then, like I said, if you have any questions that are better verbalized, can there be language added to the CC&Rs that would allow the HOA to charge back for a tax lien of a homeowner? That's a good question. I think potentially, yes. I think if that was in the CC&Rs and those were recorded, that's the contract between the parties here. So I think, banks have that language in their mortgages and in their first deeds of trust, like if they have to pay any amounts to kind of preserve their lien, that they can charge those and kind of wrap them into the total that's owed by the lien. So it's an interesting concept. It might be something to kind of just start throwing into amendment and restatement projects and see how it works if it ever comes up. I have a couple questions for some of you just for attendance purposes. So If you don't have any more questions, I have a couple people that don't just have their full name, which is not a big problem, but Don A, I see you on, if you can either unmute or chat me. I think Atkins.
Yes.
I don't want to put you on blast, but Don Atkins.
Don Atkins,
The
yes.
last name. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Deja, your last name. I'm sorry. You just have the first name on there. Oops, I think you unmuted. There we go. Maybe. I can't hear you, Deja, if you are unmuted. Oh, she isn't. Oh, I got it. I got it in the chat. Perfect. No worries on the microphone. I think that's everyone. I think we know everyone else. So, and Vanessa Bailey, you are here. I think we got you on the attendance, so we should be good. Okay. Any other questions? Like I said, if you're not sure, if you have specifics or things in your mind that are like, oh shoot, like what's going on with such and such community, send them over. It's super quick to just pull that up and take a look. And if you get any threatening foreclosure letters, certainly send them our way, and we'll look over and go over options and be able to help you guys out. But hopefully that gives you a frame of reference as far as what we're talking about when we do send those over. I appreciate everyone being on. Have a good weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ashley. That was good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was helpful, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.